Adam Burns here. We're bringing it to you today on real estate related lawsuits and getting sued. A topic nobody really likes to talk about, but one that I think is vitally important to get out there. Quick disclaimer though, before we get started, I'm not legal counsel, I'm not an attorney, so if you are getting sued, please seek legal advice from an attorney of your choosing. Real estate can be super lucrative, but it's also a risky game, full of different legal scenarios and situations that you can find yourself in that could potentially jeopardize your assets and the empire that you've created. One tried and true method of protecting those assets is separating each property into its own ownership or legal entity. So owning each property in your portfolio under an LLC. This protects the other assets in your portfolio should one of the LLCs or companies get into trouble, but it also shields your personal assets from getting involved in your day-to-day real estate business. If you're interested in hearing more about company structure and legal entities, I'd be happy to talk about it in another episode, so drop me a comment and let me know that that's something that's interesting to you. I've experienced my fair share of litigation over the years and throughout my career. I've been both the plaintiff, the one doing the suing, and I've also been the defendant, the one being sued. I'm here to share some stories and some advice with you in hopes that it'll help you with your situation. Let's talk about the anatomy of a lawsuit for a moment. We're going to explore, for the sake of this episode, from the standpoint of the defendant. That's the person being sued. A lawsuit can spawn from any kind of disagreement, and usually is because of some perceived wrongdoing on the part of the defendant. That's us in this situation. And, inevitably, both sides feel like they're right, and that's why we're in this situation in the first place. Most lawsuits, but not all, typically start with a strongly worded letter from the plaintiff or the one doing the suing's attorney to us, the defendant, outlining their desired outcome for the situation. If an agreement can be reached here, a long and lengthy legal process full of bills and other costs can be avoided. The first time you get sued can be quite scary and an emotional process the whole way through, but I'm here to tell you that that process boils down to just a series of business decisions and some logical thinking. When you receive a demand letter, this is your first opportunity to make a business decision. Take your time to understand the facts. Read the letter carefully and understand what the person is actually saying. Verifying the facts of the letter might take some time, and you might have to consult some outside sources. This step is vital and will actually drive every other decision that you make in the process, so make sure that you take your time with it. If you need more time because the letter that you received has a time limit on it, contact the person that sent you the letter. Most reasonable people will be glad to give you more time to understand where they're coming from. Now comes the first business decision. The legal process is time-consuming and expensive. The only ones who can truly profit here are the attorneys. Sorry guys, but it is true. Knowing that you're going to spend some kind of money to defend your position regardless of the outcome will aid in your decision making here. Basically, you're going to spend money to prove that you're right. Understanding that will allow you to make a decision going forward. Consult with a litigation attorney to understand what the estimated cost will be to take your case through trial. Now, this cost and this number is going to vary by geography, type of case, plenty of other factors. However, if you speak with a litigation attorney who's well versed in your field, you should be able to get a ballpark number. That way you can use that number as a benchmark for your decision making. For instance, if it costs you $50,000 to take your case through trial and prove that you're right, but the plaintiff and the one doing the suing is only asking for $5,000 or $10,000 in damages, it might make sense to take the less costly approach and give them what they're asking for, rather than dragging your business through a lengthy and time-consuming legal battle. If you can't come to an agreement here, don't despair. There'll be plenty of other opportunities throughout the process for you to discuss settlement in the future. Now it is time, though, to hire legal counsel to defend your position. Keep in mind the other side is spending just as much money as you are trying to prove that they are right. Once an attorney is involved, they'll be able to guide you through the process. Most of what happens next is aimed at information gathering for both sides. This process can take months and even sometimes years to get through. Over time, the passion that both sides once felt for the argument tends to wane and settlement becomes easier, because years on, you both just want to be done with it. Now to one of my stories. Remember that property that I said I got for free? Well, I got sued for building it by my neighbor. So you might not know this, but every permit that you have issued by a municipality comes with an appeal period that a neighbor or an abutter to the property can try to exploit to have your permit overturned. Now, my neighbor did this by filing a lawsuit against the municipality and against me. Yes, I stupidly did not listen to my own rule number 1 and didn't own the property in a separate company or LLC. In the letter, or the demand, they were looking for the building to be torn down. They weren't looking for any money, and their remedy was just take the building down. Yikes. Super scary to think about that somebody could actually force you to do something like that, huh? I thought so too. Well, since I wasn't about to tear down my brand new building, I didn't see a path for an equitable agreement at this time, and settlement wasn't really an option. So it was time to get the attorneys involved and fight the good fight. After many stressful months and tens of thousands of dollars spent in legal costs, we were able to reach an agreement. The eventual agreement and the reaffirmation that the permit was issued correctly was actually reached through a process called mediation. Mediation is a voluntary process typically suggested at some point in the legal proceedings. Both sides come together and meet with a third party who tries to help both sides come to the mutually agreeable conclusion and sign that agreement on the same day. Many times mediators are former judges who can provide context to how a court might respond to your legal case. This context and knowledge can be valuable for making your business decision on the day of mediation. As I mentioned earlier, lawsuits are really just a series of logical thinking and business decisions. Mediation and the day of mediation is no different. You're going to be weighing the cost of taking what's on the table versus the benefit of continuing on with your legal process. Today is just another day and another business decision to be made. Keep in mind that the other side is probably participating in this mediation because they're just as sick of this thing as you are and they're ready to come to an agreement. Throughout the course of litigation, continue to keep an open mind and be assessing every opportunity for settlement and look at it from that business perspective and make sure that you're making the logical choice. Cost versus benefit of continuing on. Remember, nobody sues somebody that they actually like and agree with. So before you pick a fight or make a disagreement, consider the consequences. Sometimes though, litigation is an unavoidable byproduct of business. So in those times, remember to keep a level head and constantly analyze your position. So before I go, don't forget, form an LLC, do the math and consider every opportunity for settlement, keep an open mind, and look for middle ground. Keep your cool and don't panic. That's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for watching. As always, if you have a question or comment on anything you saw here today, please drop me a comment below. See you next time.
So in one of your episodes, you mentioned that there is an appeal process for a building permit. First of all, why is there an appeal process and what does that entail?
So it's set up to protect neighbors and abutters to a property so that they have an opportunity to let the municipality and also put on record and notice that something could have been done wrong in terms of a building that's being put up next to them or around them.
But didn't you already go to like a community meeting to get everything approved? Why would you need an appeal process?
If somebody, the concept of the law is that if somebody didn't know about it before and it just happened, it gives them an opportunity to do something about it. Yeah.
How long is that process, or does it vary by state perhaps?
So it varies by area and municipality. It varies widely. But one way that we found to protect ourselves is simply notifying everybody around the property that a permit's been issued and then waiting a requisite amount of time until that period elapses.
So what can happen in an appeal process? What can be done? Like if I was a neighbor, like, as a developer, what are some things that, you worry about that, people can do during an appeal process, and how do you protect yourself?
So as I mentioned, waiting is the best form of protection after notifying everybody that a permit has been issued. So you asked about what can happen. Worst case scenario is that the permit that you just had issued is actually revoked and you aren't able to do what you thought that you were going to be able to do.
Why would it be revoked?
It could be revoked if the neighbor is able to prove, or you're unable to fight hard enough against it to prove that you were in the right, or if they were able to prove that you were issued the permit incorrectly in some way.
Gotcha. So protect yourself only by waiting. Is there anything else you can do to keep yourself from potentially getting exploited?
Again, communication is key. Always communicating with your neighbors as early and as often as you can.
Being upfront with them, it sounds like.
Yep, being upfront and always having a conversation is the surest way to prevent this from happening.
I've noticed, as your wife, you do a really good job, giving folks letters, communicating with them. Um, if anybody wants a personal phone call, you've always been really open to that, which is great. And just having those discussions, going out to coffee with different individuals. So, I think there's a variety of strategies you can do to kind of appease people and make sure that they feel heard at the end of the day, which is what you as a developer want to make sure you're doing, right? Is that you're developing what you want, but you're also making sure that people are heard and their needs are met. And I think you do a good job with that.
Thank you. And I think that that's important regardless. Obviously we want to build these buildings and we want to be able to fill them or sell them. But at the end of the day, it's an intrusive process. Coming in and building a building next to somebody that's been living there for any period of time isn't comfortable. It's not comfortable for them and it's not comfortable for us for the duration of the time that we're there. So we do everything in our power to communicate and try to work hand in hand with the people that live next to and around the projects that we're working on, because it's a long-term relationship. These things aren't built in a matter of days or weeks or months. They're built in a matter of years many times.
Right. Yeah, with the long-term goal of, obviously your goal is to better the community, but, of course, developers' idea of bettering the community doesn't always match up with the individuals. So coming to that, agreement, I think forms a really great relationship long-term. So.
Yep, and that's what we always strive for.